everyone, and thanks for tuning in. India has 100 million people with diabetes. 136 million are pre-diabetic. Those are the findings of India's largest study on diabetes. Its report is now out, and joining us today is the lead author of that report, Dr. Anjana Mohan, one of India's leading diabetologists. Dr. Anjana, thank you very much for your time here on Mirror Now. Can I start by asking you what the scope and the size of your study is?
Okay. So thank you very much for having me on this channel. So the study which was published recently is called the ICMR India Diabetes Study, or INDIAB study for short. So what does the study do? It's looking at the rates of not just diabetes, but also pre-diabetes, obesity, hypertension, cholesterol, that is dyslipidemia. So all of these are metabolic NCDs. So we're looking at this in India as a whole, which means we have looked at it state by state in the country. Now, India being such a vast and diverse country, we have to get a representative sample of the region we are studying. So we have sampled this representatively, not just in terms of geography, which means the length and breadth of the country, but we have also looked at socioeconomic status, we've looked at population size, etc. Thus, the sample of individuals that we have studied in every region, every state, is truly representative of the state that's being studied. So we have looked at all of these metabolic NCDs as well as risk factors, like we have data on physical activity, dietary patterns, social demography, etc.
Now, these are the numbers that you're telling us. Over 100 million Indians are diabetic and 136 million are pre-diabetic. What has startled you the most in this study?
Okay, so there are a number of things in the study which are, I do not know if I'll use the word startling, but definitely, let's say, a warning sign for us, or rather a wake-up call for us. The first, of course, being the increase in numbers that we are seeing. So in a country like ours, in fact, these may actually be an underestimate. The numbers may be even higher than this, and it's continuing to rise in the next few years. Now, the reason I say this is because when we look at urban and rural India, if you take diabetes, then urban is higher than rural. And that's what you would expect, because diabetes does go along with the socioeconomic status, or GDP, or Human Development Index, or whatever you'd like to call that. So you would see that the higher the socioeconomic status, higher the diabetes. And that has been so far the trend that we have seen. However, and in rural areas, it's like that as well. So it is lower than urban, but among rural areas, higher socioeconomic status has higher diabetes. So, however, this trend is now reversing in urban parts of prosperous states, wherein it's moving to the little less socioeconomically, or let's say socioeconomically disadvantaged population. Now, what does that mean? The diabetes numbers are increasing in those who are less literate, less aware, less affordable, and have less accessibility to care. So that is one of the things that we are seeing. We're also seeing that rural areas are rapidly catching up. So if today it is, it's about half what it is in urban, these numbers are coming up quite significantly. Now, even a 1% increase in the rural population translates to millions of absolute numbers, because 70% of India lives in her villages. So a percentage increase, even by half or 1%, that many more thousands of people are going to get into the disease, and thus having a burden on the healthcare system, which is already quite overburdened with so many things. So that is the other issue that's there. The third is the fact about the pre-diabetes. Now, if you look overall, the pre-diabetes numbers are even higher than the diabetes numbers. So traditional teaching has always been that if someone has pre-diabetes, a third of this population moves on to diabetes, a third stay where they are, and a third actually manage to revert back to normal. So this is traditional teaching. However, we know that in India, if someone has pre-diabetes, they actually progress into diabetes quite fast and within a short span of time. So with increase in pre-diabetes numbers, what you will see is that over the next few years, a lot of them convert into diabetes. And so the diabetes numbers may further increase in the near future. So these are some of the important things. The one other important thing the study has shown is that in India, the rate of onset or let's say the takeoff point or the age of onset of diabetes is in the age group of 25 to 34 years. Now, if you look at this in any other Western Caucasian population, you'll see people getting diabetes only after 50, 55 years of age. But in our population, there's a shift to the left by about at least 2 decades. So when people in their 20s start getting diabetes, then in 10 years' time, if there's no control, then you'll see that they start getting complications. Another 10 years from there, they start having end-stage renal disease or end-stage complications of diabetes. So that is a trajectory that we're trying to avoid, trying to get the onset to be later, control to be better, onset of complications to be later. And all of these have significance when we're talking about this at a population level.
Dr. Anjana, your study also finds a regional difference in diabetes. For example, Goa is the #1 state as far as diabetes is concerned. UP is the lowest. Your study is also telling us that diabetes is mostly found in the southern part of the country. How does that work?
Yeah, so it's very similar to what I was saying a little ago. So here we're talking about very economically prosperous states. So Goa is a very prosperous, it's a small dot on the map. Actually, along with Goa, we also have Kerala, which is very little, actually no urban-rural difference at all. And these are the states with the highest prevalence. Now, if you look at states with lower GDP, you will see lower prevalence. So there is a definite the way it goes is with the socioeconomic status of the state, which can be measured through a GDP or a HDI. So the higher the GDP, the higher the diabetes prevalence. So you will see that in all of the states that we have studied. But the important point to note there is that this is a point in time, wherein it looks like Uttar Pradesh is very low, Goa is very high. But if you just shift this by a few years into the future, what you'll see is that the Uttar Pradesh pre-diabetes numbers are very high. So you will see that conversion, rapid conversion. So let's say we do this 5 years later, you may see that actually Uttar Pradesh is higher, Goa, everything has plateaued. So the states that are actually high today, in the next few years, you'll see plateauing. That's what we predict. But states that are low are going to actually convert and the diabetes numbers are going to increase quite a lot there.
We can then roughly divide it into the pre-COVID era and the post-COVID era. From 2019, you find in your study to 2022, from 2019 to 2022, the number of people with diabetes has increased 44%. What has happened in these 4 years?
So these are not apples to apples comparison, because when the study has been going on from 2008, and the state studied has been dependent on the funding because it is a government funded study. So these are not direct apple to apple comparisons. That's one thing that you should know. Having said that, COVID has not made anything easy for anybody. So if you look at it from a lifestyle perspective, you'll see that people have been way more sedentary now, even now after all of this is over, than they were before. So physical activity levels, which were already low in the population, have come plummeting down, with people doing work from home, just moving around only in their homes, not really being active in any way, has been a problem. Then if you look at the dietary changes, that has also changed quite significantly, wherein people, it's so easy to do the Swiggy order from home, and all kinds of unhealthy food accessibility and things have increased quite significantly. So all of these things, and of course not to forget the stress and tension and all of those things that have increased manifold after COVID. So if you look at all these things together, there are lifestyle factors that have contributed to increases and will continue to contribute unless we actively do something about it. And the other thing is whether or not COVID has a direct effect on diabetes. Well, the jury is still not out on this. There are some evidence to say that virus has been causing a bit of destruction in the pancreas and things like that. But we do know that steroid use, which was done during COVID, does, worsen sugars. And if someone already has diabetes, COVID worsens the situation. So all of those are known, but whether the direct effects are there, we're still not sure about that. Let's just say overall, COVID has played a role. And there's something that we need to do. See, lifestyle and people have changed after COVID. So perceptions have changed. Things, we ourselves are not sitting in anywhere where we used to before, right? We're doing a Zoom call and you're sitting somewhere, I'm sitting somewhere, and we're still getting this done, which is great for some things. But maybe in terms of physical activity and things like that, one has to get back to being active.
Let me push you a bit more on this work from home issue, because we have a large urban viewer base. Many of them reside in metro cities. Are you saying, and is the study suggesting, that work from home is something that is triggering diabetes in the young urban Indian population?
So this is not shown in the study because this is a cross-sectional study, and those kinds of inferences cannot be made from a study like this. But as a practicing diabetologist, I would have to say it is a contributing factor because people are really not moving much anymore. When they have work from home. So before, let's just go back a little bit and see how a normal person's life would be. They would wake up in the morning, get the kids off to school, and then they would either drive to work or get into a bus or get into something, reach work. Then there is work per se. Then they, move out for lunch. They come back. Then there's work again. And then there's a transportation back home. So if you look at the body and its movement, there is movement in that 24-hour period constantly throughout the day. Now let's, kind of come to now and what people are doing right now. They wake up in the morning, kids still go home, then they take out their laptop and they're sitting in one place for prolonged periods of time. Food just Swiggies, you walk up to the dining table, pick it up, come sit in front of your computer and you're eating. And everything else is being done in front of that computer. You're really not moving. And the movement is possibly maybe to kitchen, to bedroom, dining hall, and it's like about 10, 20 steps inside the house, and that's it. So I have to say this is a contributing factor and something that people should consciously try. And I'm not saying they shouldn't work from home, but they should try and get some exercise, some physical activity in. Now, sedentary behavior, which means, in other words, sitting, is now called the new smoking. It's killing more people than anything else, actually. So getting up, when you're sitting for prolonged periods of time, getting up and just moving every hour can help you to break the sedentary behavior. Doing exercises that, we have these things in workplaces, which we call ergonomics. So these are very simple things that you do when you're prolonged hours of work. You do things like moving your ankles up and down, moving your head from side to side, moving your shoulders and arms, just moving around a little bit. It breaks that prolonged period of sitting and looking, into a computer that's putting strain on your neck, back, shoulders, not giving enough movement to the body and worsening all of these things.
Dr. Anjana, you say that diabetes is largely driven by our lifestyles, the fact that we are not exercising enough. Is it also about what we are eating and not eating? In terms of what we are eating and not eating, as a diabetologist, what would you recommend to our viewers? What are those things you simply do not touch when you go to a supermarket? Is there a list?
Okay, so that's a whole huge, 10 lecture session that you just asked me. But yeah, to put it quite simply, for a normal person, what you do is when you take we have this thing called the thali concept. So what does that mean? When you take your plate, what you do is, so this is your plate, you divide it into half. and half of the plate must be filled with green fruits and vegetables. So let's say, not fruits, sorry about that, but green leafy vegetables. So things that are healthy and green, half your plate, you fill with all of this stuff and eat it first. After that, the remaining half you divide again, and you have 2 quarters. So in 1 quarter, you fill it with protein of your choice, vegetarian protein, non-vegetarian protein, whatever it is, fill it with your whatever you like. And the last quarter is for carbohydrate. So this is rice, chapati, noodles, pasta, whatever you like, put it only in that quarter. So that is the proportion of how you should, and then on the side you have water and you have dairy. So that could be milk or curd. So this is a healthy plate. And the more you follow this for no more number of meals, the more you're getting in the right proportion of carbohydrate, protein, fat, fiber, vitamin, minerals. And this is going to help with not just glycemic control, but also for blood pressure, cholesterol, etc. It's pretty simple, actually. So this is what you do when you're eating. Now, when you go to a supermarket, unfortunately, from the studies that we have been doing over the years, there are not many healthy choices. Even things that are declared supposedly supposed to be diabetes friendly, actually, some of them directly have sugar in them. But even if they don't, then they are quite high in fat. There's a lot of debate about sweeteners and things recently. So they're not entirely healthy for you. So what you do overall is, I would say, try to avoid anything that comes out of a packet, because these are processed and packaged foods. It may be just better to stick with natural stuff, things that you get in your own kitchen, and what you can make and consume fresh. So try and avoid. I know that's not easy for a working population, but as much as possible, it may be even healthier for you if you're a working woman and have a busy week ahead, to plan the cooking on the weekends and even freeze for a week. That may be healthier than doing packaged stuff, which are loaded with fat, calories, preservatives, and all kinds of other stuff.
Dr. Anjana, I'm fairly certain many people come to you and ask you this one question: how do I even know that I'm pre-diabetic? Apart from lifestyle, we know that diabetes is genetic as well. And that's a contributory factor as well. How do I know that I'm pre-diabetic? When should I get myself tested? Any guidelines on that? Any SOPs on that?
So I often say to people, it's like having a loaded gun. So you have this gun, which is full of bullets, right? So those are your genes. But the bullets are not going to do anything to you unless you pull the trigger. And the trigger is, of course, your lifestyle. So how do you know if you're pre-diabetic? Well, see, that's the whole problem. Diabetes is a silent disease. And you'd go from state of being normal into pre-diabetes, into diabetes without any symptomatology at all, most of the time. So it's not like you have a fever, you feel unwell. And by the time you develop symptoms, it's already quite often quite late. And the symptoms are coming due to organ damage, which is like, few steps after the diabetes diagnosis. So at the stage of pre-diabetes, the only thing that we can do is screening. So what is it that we can do? There's something called a risk calculator, which is called the Indian Diabetes Risk Score. This is available online. It's available in many places. It asks 4 questions depending on your age, your physical activity, your family history of diabetes, and your waist circumference, which is your pant size. Based on these, it will give you a risk of how much risk do you have of having diabetes. So if your risk is less than 30, you're all good. You can wait 3-5 years before you do any testing. If it's between 30 and 60, then within, the next couple of months, it's possibly good to go and get checked to see where your sugar levels are. And if it's above 60, it's mandatory to get an oral glucose tolerance test done to diagnose whether you have diabetes or pre-diabetes.
Given the fact that you put out the numbers that you have, 100 million people in this country with diabetics, 136 people who are pre-diabetic. We are a nation that is not exercising. We are a nation that eats too much carbs. Will it be fair to say that India is losing its battle with diabetes?
I think I'm going to turn that round and say, actually, India is very well poised to be able to win over this if we all put our minds to it. So this cannot be done by a single individual or group of individuals, but this has to be a concerted effort at individual, community, and governmental levels. Government of India has been doing, there is aware, most of the state governments are aware and start having NCD policies in place. The Ayushman Bharat scheme actually has 150,000 wellness centers, even at primary level, wherein they are able to give diabetes and hypertension care, diagnosis and coverage, even at rural level. So it's not like, nobody's aware. People are aware. Things are in place. Now it's about getting it done. And I think that's where the individual level effort also comes in, because a lot of this is about behavior change. And therein lies the hard part. So I think together, all of us can definitely prevent. We are not losing anything. I think we're rather well poised to actually win over this if we all come together. And this is where people like you make a difference, wherein people need to be informed of what they can do, how they can do it, and how they can make themselves healthier.
Dr. Anjana, is this the largest study of its kind that has been done in India, possibly anywhere in the world as well? And what has been the experience for your team, especially your field team, meeting so many Indians across this country?
So this is a very interesting question. Yeah, to answer the first part, yes, it is the largest study on diabetes and metabolic NCDs in India. But the experiences and the barriers and the challenges that we have been really something, something that we've never seen before. And so much so that people are now asking us to write about it. So it starts at many levels. So first of all, there are so many languages, there are so many, barriers of so many kinds when you go to a country like India, not just geography, food, climate, culture, people, so many things. So it starts off by us actually getting permissions from the state before we go there. So we need permissions from the police, we need permissions from state, we need from the DPH, and all of these things come together. We have like a set of letters that we carry when we go to each of the states, go into a village, go into an urban area, etc. So before we do that, we try and get. Then there is the thing of the field team itself. So imagine trying to get information in so many languages, in so many different parts of the country from so many different types of people. So what we do is we map a state. There is always a local state principal investigator, and we take the team from all over the state, different parts. There are often different regions, clans, dialects. We try and take investigators from all over there, field investigators. Everybody is brought to Chennai to MDRF for a 15-day intensive training, wherein they are taught each part of the study. They have to have a written exam. They have to pass a practical exam. Only then they qualify to do study. We've done this for every single state of the country. So then they go back there and then they start collecting information from the field. Then come the actual, perceptions. Imagine in some rural parts of certain states, it's not been easy. There are rules in certain states, and I'm not naming any state, but there are rules in certain states that if a non-resident of that state draws blood from a person of that state, they'll cut off their head. So those are rules, existing rules. There are places where we've gotten kidnapped. There were places where, terrorists have gotten to our teams, and then we said, no, we're poor field investigators. We come here for information. We don't really have anything else. So they just took our money and let the teams off. For 3 days, we had no communication with any of the team members. We were terrified. There were bomb blasts. There was insurgency. There was, in one state, there were bows and arrows. So our team was locked in a room. And every time in the hotel, and every time they opened a window, like an arrow would fly in. And, they were stuck there for the longest time. Then there were rumors that we were black magicians, kind of taking blood for black magic. There were WhatsApp rumors that we were spreading infertility, all kinds of things that had absolutely made no sense. So we had a hard time of it. And yet, if we had a 90% response rate, I think that's hats off to the very, very hardworking team that went there. The way we got over this was that we would talk to the local chief there, whoever that person was, and whatever the issue was or whatever clarification they wanted, we would show them, what we were actually doing, and all what we wanted, was primarily just information about what they're doing, what they're eating, sleeping, etc. We were a very harmless kind of gang, we didn't really want anything else. And then, of course, we had to collect blood to check glucose and cholesterol. So stuff like that. And also we, when we went to certain places, there were elections going on. So then opposing parties, because you go in a van, the team goes in a van, there are equipment in the van, we have to take things, boxes, freezers, all these things are there. So they would say, oh, there's money in that van. We came on television saying that people were, coming and, telling people for votes. And oh my God, it was really, it was really an experience, I must say.
Dr. Anjana Mohan, it was a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you very much for joining us here on Mirror Now. Thank you so much.